Israel is at war with Hamas, a terror organization in Gaza that is also a proxy of Iran. In fact, the Islamic Republic of Iran is considered the arch enemy of the state of Israel. Tehran's stated goal is the destruction of Israel. But it hasn't always been this way. Well, joining me here at the big table now is Guido Steinberg. He's a familiar face here at DW. He's a Middle East analyst and a senior fellow with the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Guido, it's good to see you again. I want to talk with you about this ring of fire that Iran wants to create around Israel. We know that Hezbollah and in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, they are part of that ring of fire. And I'm wondering, to what extent does Tehran control both of these groups?
Well, Tehran most likely controls Hezbollah, simply because the Iranian Revolutionary Guards founded Hezbollah in South Lebanon in 1982, and there have never been any reports about any conflicts between Tehran and southern Beirut, where Hezbollah has its headquarters. And I think, and most Lebanese think, that Hezbollah receives all its strategic orders from Tehran. And that's totally different with regard to Hamas. Hamas is a Sunni organization, in contrast to the Islamic Republic, in contrast to Hezbollah. It's not religiously and not ideologically aligned. It only shares an anti-imperialism with Hezbollah and Iran, and it hates Israel. But in spite of all this support it has received by Iran and Hezbollah, it's not a very reliable partner.
Israel's goal, we know, remains to destroy Hamas's military capabilities. Will Iran let that happen? We know that the Ayatollah has already accused Israel of crossing several red lines. I mean, is there another red line, or are there more red lines to cross?
Yeah, well, the destruction of Hamas might be a red line because Iran has invested heavily in what it calls the axis of resistance. And it includes Hezbollah, it includes the Houthi rebels in Yemen, Shia militia in Iraq, other militias in Syria. And if you try to destroy a part of this axis of resistance, and especially an important one like Hamas, and it's important simply because it's at the heart, it is situated at the heart of the conflict with Israel, it might force Hezbollah and Iran to react militarily. And I think that's quite a plausible scenario.
We've seen rocket fire coming from Lebanon. We've also seen attempts by Houthis in Yemen to attack Israel. How much of an existential threat are these groups to the state of Israel right now?
I don't think that they are an existential threat, but if all these groups attack, and if there is a war in the West Bank as well with Palestinian terrorist groups, it might become a large threat. Although I only take Hezbollah seriously simply because the group is battle-hardened. It has fought in Syria for years and years on the side of the Assad regime. It has more than 150,000 missiles, drones, rockets, cruise missiles, 150,000. So they can do a lot of harm. They are not an existential threat to Israel, but combined, Hamas, Hezbollah, and all the other groups, that would be quite an uphill battle for the Israeli army.
Well, what about public sentiment in Iran and in Lebanon for another war? I mean, is the public will there to go to war?
No, of course not. We have seen that in Iran for years now, right now. Ever since 2009, the Islamic Republic, or perhaps even from the 1990s, the Islamic Republic has lost a lot of its legitimacy. It has lost a lot of popular support. Same in Lebanon. Most Lebanese don't want a war. Even those who support Hezbollah, if they remember the war of 2006, when the Israelis destroyed major parts of the south, that I think is part of the reason that Hezbollah and Iran have been so calm. That might be the reason why Hezbollah General Secretary needed 3 weeks to hold a first speech on the conflict. Both sides don't want this war because they know about their own weaknesses in Lebanon and Iraq.
I want to ask you about the U.S. military presence. Today, the Pentagon tweeted a photo of a U.S. submarine in the Gulf, a submarine that carries nuclear warheads or can carry warheads. Very unusual for the Pentagon to do that. We know that the Pentagon has also sent 2 aircraft carriers into the Mediterranean. Is that a clear signal directed exactly at Tehran?
Yes, I think so. It's quite unusual to see these pictures online, and I think it's a signal. The Biden administration is extremely worried about the conflict escalating, especially the conflict with Hezbollah, but possibly also with Iran-aligned militia in Iraq, in Syria, and Yemen, and possibly also with Iran. And I think that is the reason why we have seen these not so subtle pictures and hints.
Yeah, the submarine you're not supposed to see there. Guido Steinberg, as always, Guido, we appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Well, for more on this, I'm now joined by Yalda Zarbakhch. She's the head of DW's Farsi services, and by Shani Rozanes, DW's Middle East analyst. Let's start with you, Yalda. Iran has vowed for years to destroy Israel, yet we haven't seen any direct involvement in that current conflict yet. Why?
You know, the Islamic Republic is very strategic, and they kind of let others do the work as long as they can not, not get involved directly. But they are, we just heard it in the report, they have paved the way in the last 40 years actually to support their proxies, to support the Hamas, to support the Hezbollah financially, ideologically, and military. And so this is, they are actually now seeing, it also depends on how hard and how the message from the other side is. The U.S. made it actually very clear by sending warships to the Mediterranean and now also submarines in the region that if Lebanon, if Hezbollah enters the war, we will hit Hezbollah. So they are very aware of that. And I think this message arrives there as well. And also right after the Hamas attacks on 7th October, U.S. said that there is no indications that Iran has been involved directly. And this is also a message in a way to say we don't want to get involved with you in a war. So, watch out.
Shani, Yalda has just mentioned the proxies, that is the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. How big of a threat are those two for Israel's security?
Well, we've seen them badgering, to the least, Israel in the last 4 weeks. They keep Israel's army stretched to its maximum between the deep south, the middle southern part of Israel, with Hamas on the north. And also we know of Shiite militias operating in Syria, which is to the southern border, eastern border of Israel. That's also, and at the same time, we've also seen militias backed by Iran operating against American forces in Iraq. And this is also something we need to keep in mind. Yalda was mentioning the American involvement here. They are on the ground. This affects the Americans very well. This is not just their fear of bigger escalation for the region. This has straight, implications for the Americans as well if this goes out of hand and if Iran goes more involved deeper into this conflict.
Shani, Israel's aim is, quote, to destroy Hamas. How realistic is that if we're looking at the support it is getting from a big player like Iran?
No doubt that the support, the financial, also we know of equipment and training that was provided by Iran before the October 7th effect. No doubt it brought Hamas to this very advanced position where they managed to surprise Israel in such a way during that attack. We also need to keep in mind destroying Hamas is also destroying the idea behind Hamas. This is almost impossible. Will it be possible, however, to uproot the leaders of that movement and its operational structure in Gaza? Israeli IDF claims it is possible. It's all depending on the costs, how much time Israel has and how much patience that the world has to bear with the immense cost we see in civilians' lives that is, this operation is taking in Gaza.
Yalda, back to you. You've touched upon this, but how big is the risk of this turning into an open confrontation between Israel and Iran?
You know, there are many factors behind it. At the moment given, Iran is trying to avoid getting into a war because they know, speaking about the costs, they know that could also, there's a high price to it because Iran is right now domestically weakened. Within the population, they have basically, based on surveys, only around 10 to 15% support of the Iranian population. That we have been witnessing this ongoing revolution, the Women Life Freedom movement, until now. So they are very hard on cracking down the protesters inside. But they also know that now entering a war and then having the outside and the inside factor, they are, I think, not prepared for that at the moment.
Now, Iran, Yalda, is also threatening the West. Iran's defense minister said that, quote, Iran would be hit hard if Washington didn't implement a ceasefire in Gaza. Is all this just posturing from Tehran, or is it raising the stakes?
It is actually demonstrating force, I think, and we have to also keep in mind, for instance, the much anticipated speech of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah some days ago. Everyone or his followers, they expected maybe a more harsh kind of "let's go, we enter this war" tone, and it wasn't. And we know. It is clear that this is, Tehran, the Islamic Republic, and the Hezbollah leader all saying that they were surprised by the Hamas attack. And really, these are signs that they are, demonstrating force. But they don't really want to get involved. And there's also another maybe important issue to mention that throughout these last 44 years of the Islamic Republic, this narrative of anti-Israel, people in school having to chant every morning death to Israel and death to US, this has changed a lot within the population in Iran. So what we see now is basically a huge support for Israel opposing all the values of their government, of the Islamic Republic.
Shani, the US also says a nuclear missile submarine has arrived in the region. Is that a message to Iran directly, briefly?
Definitely. That was the first thing that Biden said on the first day. Anybody looking at what's happening between Hamas and Israel and considering to join in, don't. That was exact quote from Biden. We've seen also at the same time, you were just mentioning earlier, Blinken, a visit to the Middle East. If we look back, there's another foreign minister taking, tours around the Middle East, and that's the Iranian one. He's been to Turkey, he's been to Lebanon. So we are seeing these two very clear, parallel, objecting alliances formed between what the Americans are trying to build, the moderate alliance, which includes Jordan, Egypt, Bahrain, the Saudi Arabias, and so on. And then on the other hand, we've seen, the Iranian foreign minister in Lebanon with Hamas, also Turkey. And this is basically why the Americans and the whole world is watching at this conflict, because there's an understanding this is much bigger than just the immediate Israel-Hamas conflict.
A lot of players at work there, that's for sure. Yalda Zarbakhch, head of DW's Farsi service, and Shani Rozanes, DW's Middle East analyst. Thank you both very much.